it's Rob. Welcome to Axel's Garage. Today we're out here working on the Big Dummies K5 Blazer again. Now, those Blazers only had 210 horsepower out of the factory. Well, GM claims it was 210. Everybody says that it was probably in the 180 range in real numbers. So you should always do everything you can to keep that vehicle running like a top, because even at its best, 210 ain't a whole lot for like a 5,000, 5,500 pound truck. So one of the things that you really should do with these trucks, you know, new cars today, you don't really need to tune them up anymore for the most part. And when you do need to tune them up, the tune-up schedule is real long. Well, if you remember back in the 70s and 80s cars, you had to tune them up like once a year. And sometimes what happens is these older vehicles, they just get neglected because people got used to not doing maintenance on them as much as they really need to. So now this truck we bought really had a lot of unknowns in as far as its maintenance history. You know, we bought it a year ago. Really didn't do a whole lot to it except, you know, we did a water pump. Of course, we changed the oil, put a new distributor in it, and we just recently did a video on doing the timing, which was a real good video, and getting that timing where it's supposed to be really gives you the performance you should get out of it. And I'll put a link to that right up here. And that's a real great video on setting the timing. So while we were setting the timing, we realized that the spark plug wires were like, you know, broken out of the original plastic looms and mounts. You know, they had dried out over the years and cracked, and the wires were just laying there, and some of them were laying on the exhaust manifolds and they burned through. Some of them really weren't tight on the spark plug boot ends or the distributor boot ends, and the wires were just in shit condition. Who knows how old they were. The plugs were actually rusted. You could see rust on the plugs, which means they've been in there for who knows how long. Now, this Blazer has a Jasper replacement engine and transmission in it. We don't know how long the engine and transmission have been in there. It seems to run reasonably well. All the Jasper stickers are in real good condition, so we don't think that it's got a lot of time on it. We don't know how many years or how many miles or anything like that. It's showing, you know, 52, 54,000 on the odometer. We have no idea. A lot of unknowns. You know, buying an old used car that sat in a barn for a long time and then got sold and sat in a barn for a few more years, got sold again to us. So we really don't know a lot about it. So we're starting from scratch. So now that we got our timing issues done, new distributor in, timing set where it's supposed to be, seems to be running pretty good even with those crappy wires, we decided we're going to do the plugs and we're going to do the wires, because that's the only thing really left in a tune-up on these. You got your cap and your rotor, which we'll replace with the distributor. You got your spark plugs, and you got your spark plug wires, and you got a PCV valve, and an air filter. That's your whole tune-up on these trucks. So went on Rock Auto. There's a whole lot of brands that you can buy when it comes to plugs and wires. Now, this is a stock engine. The only thing that's really that we've done to it to make it other than stock is get rid of the catalytic converter, because we don't need that anymore. We're emissions exempt. It's old enough. And we put a nice free-flowing dual exhaust in it with glass packs, and it sounds real nice. And that exhaust system hopefully gives us a little bit more horsepower by freeing it up, getting rid of that cat, and opening up the exhaust a little bit. Now on the ignition end, you could chop around. You know, if you're building a high-performance engine, you of course you want to go with something other than a stock spark plug wire. But if you know, pretty much got a stock engine and you just need it to run well, I like to go with, you know, a good factory replacement. So whether you're buying a GM vehicle, whether you're buying an AC Delco part or you're buying an aftermarket part, just get a good quality factory replacement. Most of the crap is going to be made, you know, foreign made, I should say. So, but I went with what GM would do. So if you took it into a GM dealer, what are they going to put on it? They're going to put AC Delco wires on it. The price was right for these AC Delco wires, either on Amazon or Rock Auto. I happened to buy it on Rock Auto. They say they're professional wires. I don't. That's bullshit, right? Did you ever see a pair of, gotta buy these spark plug wires? They're amateur wires. You know, they're professional. Anyway, AC Delco wires, Hencho in Mexico, of course. But we're hoping that the AC Delco, even though it's made in Mexico, we're hoping the quality control is a little better, because if you went into a GM dealership for whatever car you might have, no matter how old it is, this is the kind of wire they're going to use, and they don't want that car coming back in there because one was a crappy quality, or there was crappy quality part put on it. So this is what they're using. This is what we decided to use. Nice price on Rock Auto. Took them out of the box, and they are a nice, they say premium silicone. Again, did you ever see one marked not so premium silicone, or you know, kind of iffy silicone? No, they always call it premium, but it's silicone wise, 8mm. They're black, which I like because, and especially on a daily driver car, they get dirty. So when you get like fancy red wires, blue wires, whatever, and you're working on it, they get dirty and it starts to look crappy. The black at least hides the dirt. What I did with the wires, I got them on my vise. Let me just move the camera down. Alright, I got them just laying in the vise like this, and I laid them out. I got two that are real long, right, the same size, and I got one just a little bit shorter, and then I got two that are a little shorter than that, and then I got 1, 2, and 3 that are the same length, and then I got the real short one, which is for the coil. Alright, so the only reason why I laid them out like that is just so that I know, okay, there's my longest, because your two longest are going to be easy, and then your next one's going to be the next cylinder, but it's going to go to the other side of the distributor. That's why it's a little bit longer, and then your shorter ones are all pretty close. Your coil wire is going to be a short one, and again, the same thing. It's going to have a longer boot on one end and a shorter boot on the other end. Your longer boot is going to go on your distributor side, and your shorter boot is going to go on your coil side. And there's only one to screw that up. If you want to make things real easy when you put them in, I start with the number 1 cylinder, take the number 1 wire off, and match it up, put a number 1 wire in. And then I'll go to 1, 3, 5, 7, and then I'll go to the other side and do the same thing. But if you're pulling them all off and putting them back on, remember on most GM, especially the stock manifolds, you will find your firing order printed on that manifold. It's either engraved or it's in the casting itself. And if you really want, you can just, I mean, these are on Amazon, eBay, wherever you, a lot of times they come with aftermarket spark plug kits. Let me see if I can get it to focus. There it is. They're just little clips that have 1 through 8 on them that you could put on the wires themselves so that you don't get confused which wire is which. Verify your timing order. Verify, you know, your number 1 cylinder. You know, take that number 1 plug, right, which on a Chevy is the driver's side all the way up front. Follow it to number 1 on your distributor cap. Maybe put a little mark on it with a Sharpie so that you know that's number 1. Make sure that your firing order is correct. Don't leave it, you know, oh, well, I'm just going to replace exactly what's there because it was correct. You don't know that it's correct. In these computer-controlled cars, having the firing order off, sometimes you can't even tell when you're driving it, and it still runs smooth because the computer is compensating for things. Not making it right, but compensating a little bit where you don't really notice, depending on which cylinders are switched, you don't even notice it. So verify when you're going around your cap that your timing order is correct. Don't leave it, especially in a vehicle like this that's unknown. Don't always rely on the guy that did it the last time. Even if the guy that did it the last time is you, don't rely on you because you could have made a mistake. And with the old non-computer controlled carbureted, you know, small block Chevys or Fords or whatever you're working on, just your old basic non-computer, when you had the firing order off, you knew something was up. In these situations, you don't always know something's up. So that's it for the wires. So I got them all laid out in here. I'm inside because it's like 30 degrees outside. I'm never going to get a nice day until the spring. So sun's out, it's 30 degrees, we're working on this. But I laid everything out inside in the garage here where it's 60 degrees and nice and warm. So now I got my plugs. Alright, so what I did was, spark plugs come 4 in a box. So I got 2 boxes of spark plugs. Again, I'm using AC Delco. It's CR43TS for this 89 K5 Blazer as the factory replacement. Inside these boxes are 4 plugs in each box, and they come in their own little box. Alright, and what you do, and I'll do it with one, I already got my 7 plugs on my shop rake here lined up. They're ready to go. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your plug out of the box. Now remember, there's a gap on each plug, and the gap is the distance, right, between the two, between the Huzumawatsi that goes over the top and the contact there. That's where the spark jumps. I don't know what they're called. It really doesn't matter what it's called. But anyway, there's a gap. Now, on the radiator support, there's a printed emissions sticker that tells you a whole bunch of stuff, and it also tells you the spark plug gap, and it's listed at 35. That's 35 thousandths. Now, Yes. The boss is checking in.
No, I'm going back to work.
Okay. So right there on the radiator support, it says 35 thousandths. Now these are pre-gapped at 35 thousandths. Now the thing is, they're in a box, and they're not real tight in that box. You saw where was the box? They're in this box here, right? They move around in the box. I'm sure in Mexico where they're made, they're taking these boxes, they're loading them in, they're throwing them in a thing. Then they get stacked in a pallet. That pallet gets thrown in a truck. That truck gets driven all over the place or flown. Then they get put in a warehouse, and a warehouse, puts them on a shelf or somewhere, or a pallet goes somewhere, and it's banging around, banging around, banging around. Then it's got to go from the warehouse to a distribution center to a parts store to a retail, to this, whatever. They're going around, and they're banging around the whole time. So a little banging, right, on the top of it is gonna affect the gap. So you always want to check your gap. Now, what you also want to do is find out what people are really running in its gap. And you can do an online search. You can Google tube it. You could just Google it. You could check your forums for your specific vehicle, and that's what I like to do. I like to go to any of the forums that deal with the Chevy pickups or the K5 Blazers, something like that, to see what they're doing. Because I knew right off the bat when I saw 35, I said, you know what, 35? That sounds kind of small. 35 is like old school 70s points distributor kind of gap. Electronic ignition, you can up that gap a little bit, which gives you a better burn. It turns out that most people are using 45, some people even 50. I remember when I had my 90 K5 Blazer, when I bought it brand new, we were gapping the plugs at 50. But everybody on the Blazer forums claim that 45 is the best place to go. So you take your plug out, and I got a feeler gauge instead of using one of those spark plug gappers, because I must have 20 of them, and I can't find one of them right now in my messy garage. So I took a 35 thousandths and a 10 thousandths, which is going to make 45 thousandths, right? Squeeze them together, right? And you're just going to put them in your plug. So what I do is, this is real tight going in, but if you jiggle a little bit, and you just, I'll turn it this way, you can see, you just kind of jiggle it in and get it to go in and wiggle like that, and you, boom, it goes in. And what I did as I slid it in, once it started to go in, I just gave it a little up down, which you really can't even see, and it's nice and tight on the 45 thousandths, just like that, right? And now you know you're at 45 thousandths. Be careful from now on until you install it. Be careful you don't knock that tip into anything, because if you do, you're going to knock that gap off. So now I'm at 45 thousandths, which is where you should be for an electronic ignition. And like I said, everybody on the forums likes where they're going with that. You can use a spark plug gapper tool. You can just use a feeler gauge. It's up to you. I usually use the gapping tool. I just can't find it, so I'm using a feeler gauge. Then what I do to get my spark plugs ready is I take some anti-seize, the silver anti-seize. This is the anti-seize lubricant that will not make your spark plug seize up in that cylinder head. And because of some force of nature, guys that have used this know, it's going to get everywhere, all over your hands, all over your clothes, all over your face. It just gets everywhere. But if you try to use it very gingerly, or how do you say it, sparingly, that's the word I was looking for, right? Just put a little bit, right, a real thin coating on the threads, and then you're going to put a thin coating on the bevel, where the bevel of the plug goes into the cylinder head, just so you don't have corrosion that occurs between the cylinder head and the bevel of the plug. And you're just putting a real little amount of this stuff, and remember, it's going to get everywhere. It always does. It's just, there's some force in nature that gets it everywhere. So there you go. Focusing. Focus. Right? Nice and neat like that. Alright, and then you can lay all 8 of your plugs. After they gap, then you got your anti-seize lubricant, and then you can take your anti-seize lubricant, and you can take this, and you can put this away, and then grab a shop rag. Right? And you see, I got silver stuff on my hand, and I got it over here, and I got it over here, and you wipe it off, and it still shows up places. So what I do is, I try to get it all off that I can notice, and I take this rag, and this rag will no longer be used until it's washed, because the next person that grabs this rag is going to get silver stuff. So I'm going to put it over with my dirty rags, and we can now move the camera, go outside, and start putting these plugs and wires in. Alright, so starting with my number 1 wire, I'm going to pull it off. These pull off pretty easy. Sometimes they're a little tough. You could twist them, yank them. If you're saving the wires, you don't want to pull from back here and pull it out of the boot. I am going to save these wires just so I have a backup wire set. Alright, and then you got these little factory clips that most of the times on a vehicle this old, they're real brittle and they break off. This one didn't break off. Yeah. Alright, so you get that wire out. Alright, that one just crumbled to pieces, you could see. Hopefully you can see. Let me check the camera. So that one, that's a good one. Here's the one that just cracked and crumbled. But we're gonna make wire looms out of zip ties or cable ties, wire ties, whatever you might call them. So any clips, right? And see where this one went, and try to figure out which one it is. It's all the way around the back. Alright, so it's this one. Alright, so we take that wire out, and you can see, we're going to be saving this one. See right there where it was laying on the exhaust, and just destroyed it. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll go inside and match up the length to this one. We're probably going to run them over like that, or some way out of the way of the hot exhaust. So here's my number 1. I'm just going to lay it over there for now, and I'm going to lay it right here for now, and we're going to pull that plug out. Pull the plug out and you can see it's all rusted up over here. Probably been in there forever. It is the same exact plug, 43. Alright, and the gap looks really tight. It almost looks like this one was dropped and the tip was bent over a little bit before it was put in, but it is really tight. A nice chocolatey brown, which is what we want on the tip of the plug. I don't know how good you can see the color, but it's a nice chocolatey brown. It doesn't look bad. It just looks old. Alright, so the easiest way to get your new plug in is to slide it into the holder, into the socket I should say, by hand, without banging the tip. Find that hole, and just nice and easy thread it in by hand until it bottoms out. And once you get down to the bottom, take your ratchet handle, put it on, and just give it a little oomph. Doesn't have to be super tight. Okay? And that one's in. Now you're going to repeat the process with all of your spark plugs, and you're also going to put the wires on. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my number 1 wire on my spark plug so that I don't lose track of which wire is which. I'm going to put it on my distributor. As I go along, I'll do the same thing each one. I'm not going to worry about the layout of the wires just just yet. I want to get all the plugs in, all the wires on the spark plug end and the distributor end, just so I know that I didn't mess up my firing order. Remember, verifying as you go around. Now, just like we lube up bolts when we put bolts in to make it easier for the next guy, because that next guy, he might be you, I'm going to use a little dielectric grease. Alright, and what you do is you just squirt some in the boot, right, just like that. Now, this is an optional step. You don't have to do this step. I do this step because the boots love to get stuck to the spark plugs. Alright? And then you just push it on until it snaps in. The boots love to get stuck to the spark plugs. And this will not only lube your electrical connection, but it'll lube that boot where it's coming in contact with the plug, so the heat down there doesn't make that rubber and the plug stick together, and then it's a bitch to get off. So there's number one. Alright, in. And now what I'll do is I'll just move the rest of them on this side, do the same thing on the other side, and then I'll show you how we route the wires. Alright, so after you get all your plugs changed and you got all your wires temporarily laid out, you go through the routing process, and you want to route those wires away from any real hot heat source. You don't want them laying against the exhaust manifold, of course, but you really want them off of anything that gets real hot. You also don't want them any place where they're going to interfere with your linkage, whether it be your transmission linkage or your throttle linkage or your cruise control linkage, and anywhere where you're going to pinch them when you put the air cleaner back on or anything back on. The best way to do that is with wire looms to keep them out of the way. You can buy pre-made wire looms. You can get universal assortments, which give you a whole lot of options. You could buy mounting kits and rails. You could use the factory ones if you still have them intact, or you could build your own out of zip ties, and that's what we do, or wire ties, cable ties, whatever you call them. But we build our own all the time because the wires lay out real nice. Now, one screw up, as I was starting to build my loom back on the passenger side, I go to put the wires down permanently on the distributor cap, and they kept popping off. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And it turns out that, remember at the beginning of the video when I showed you the two ends, the one with the knurls on it that goes on the spark plug? Well, guess what? Those knurls aren't for the spark plug. They're for the distributor cap end. Why the knurls are there, I don't know, but the boot itself is just a little bit shorter, and that allows you to cinch it down to the distributor cap end. The longer boot that goes on the spark plug end, when you go to put it on the distributor cap, the boot's too long. It's hitting the top of the cap, and it actually pushes it back up. When you push it down, you hear it snap in, then you let go, and there's so much boot there that it actually pushes it back up. So I had to take that whole side off and redo it. I got the passenger side, the driver's side is all done and buttoned up. I still got to make my zip tie looms for my passenger side, but I'll show you what those looms look like. Alright, you can see my zip tie looms. I got them going towards each other, coming out. This way they don't hit the exhaust. Then they come up over the valve cover. I keep them in a nice row together. I made a zip tie loom here to keep the four of them separated nice. And then I took one zip tie to the bottom of this breather tube. This way it keeps it up and off of the linkage that's right below it. And then back around to the distributor cap. This way they all lay out nice and easy. I like to keep the wires routed neat. I like to button it up all nice and neat. I like to try to keep the engine compartment as clean as possible. That's why those black wires were a bonus, because having to put them on and then take them off again, your hands start to get a little bit dirty at least. You don't see all the marks on the black wires. To show you what I mean by the zip tie loom, right, I'll take 3 old wires here. So you want to keep them, in a row if you're routing them like that together. So you're going to take a cable tie and you're going to go around all 3 of them and just make it a little bigger than all 3 like that. Alright, then you're going to take another one. It's a lot easier when they're laying in the car. You're going to take another one, put it right over. And you pull it, not so that it's all the way tight, but it's sort of giving a little wire shape to that one. Then you move one wire over, grab another one. Now definitely you don't need to use ones that are this long. I'm using one this long because of the width, not really because of the length of them, because you're going to cut all these ends off. So it's a lot of waste, but I didn't have any short, thick ones, and I like to use ones about this thick for the wires because they keep them separated in a nice amount. Alright, so you got it like that, and then you can start to tighten this one up a little bit. Alright, now you can move them up and down so that they're laying nice, exactly the way you want them. And then right before you tighten the big one across, you're going to cinch this one and cinch this one. Then you can tighten the big one. Slide this over a little bit. Like that. And tighten it down. And there you have it. You cut your ends off and you got your nice, real cheapo zip tie or cable tie loom. So that's it. I got my, like I said, my driver's side's done. Passenger side, I just got to build my looms. Put the coil wire in. That's my last thing. My air cleaner, just check everything. Make sure all your wire ends are either on the distributor cap snapped in nice or on the spark plug snapped in nice. You don't want a loose one that'll fall off on you. And you're good to go. That's it. Other than the PCV valve, that's it for a tune-up on these throttle body 350 Chevy engines. It's, you know, PCV valve, air filter, plugs, cap and rotor. And we just did the wires because, like we said, we had an unknown when it came to the history of this. So now we know we can write it in our book, the mileage, the date, and what we did to it. So we know we're starting to develop our own history with this this beast here for the big dummy. And in a few months, we'll have it back down to him at school, and it should be running and handling like a top, hopefully. Got some more work coming up. If you like the episode today, real easy, plugs and wires, please give us that thumbs up. And if you like what we're doing here at Axel's Garage and Axel's Kitchen, don't forget, subscribe to our channels, and thanks for watching.